20 violins playing at the same time. The thing that makes orchestra so beautiful is what's called chorus, where you have all the violins playing slightly different pitches. They're all playing an A, but it's not the exact same A. It's slightly different A's. And if you talk to Antonio Marin and Allison, they are incredible string producers. And you ask them, you say, if you perfectly tune, if you do 20 takes of violin and you perfectly tune them the same way every time and you put it all together, it actually sounds small. But when you take 20 violins and you don't tune them perfectly, and they're all a little bit sharp, a little bit flat, but and the average of them is in the middle, that's when it sounds beautiful and the biggest. So I would argue a audience that's slightly out of tune is actually more beautiful. I actually prefer that. And so I would not want to tune you guys. That's where they get. So let's just listen to the crowds by themselves. This is one stereo set. Let's listen to another stereo set.
Do you know what mics these are?
I do. Here's another stereo set. That's what they are. Okay, we had a question back here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask why the mics are placed exactly where they are.
You want different locations for redundancy. So if you put all your microphones in one spot, when one person screams, what happens?
Destroys.
It destroys all six channels.
Yeah.
And you'll see a lot of live recordings where they put two microphones on top of each other, recording an audience. And I'm like, what? Why would you ever do that? Like, if one person screams in front of that, both channels are destroyed. Every microphone should be in a completely different location. Never double up an audience mic. That's really silly to me. Everything should be physically separated for redundancy. When somebody screams something weird, no big deal. You've got 5 other locations that are good. Go back.
How do you get like the front house mix out of the, like that sounded pretty clean. How do you get
Shotgun
the front house
mics.
mix out?
Shotgun mics. Shotgun microphones are very good at rejecting side noise. They're like laser beams. They can look at what's in front of it and reject on what's the side of it. It's turned into a Q&A. Let's go back.
Yay.
What about pencil mics? Are those just
Pencil mics are condenser microphones. Condenser microphones, there's 2 versions, large diaphragm and small diaphragm. And they're both condenser microphones. And those are excellent at a lot of things, but those are not focused microphones. Those pick up like this. They just pick up everything. And so I'm not a fan of condenser microphones for an audience. Now, there's a caveat to this. You ready? The ones above your head in the room, did you look at what those were? Did you guys look up above your heads out there? 414s, very observant. Why would I use those out there? What do you think?
Omni? Figure of 8 Omni.
Okay, why?
Because the figure of 8 has nullifiers on the center point and you're facing that.
The smartest guy in the room, right? The smartest guy in the
That was my
room.
guess.
You get a gold star.
He gets a
Tell
Pro
us
Tools
again.
license.
Tell us again.
The 414 has multiple photo patterns, so they stick the pattern to a figure of 8, like a lobe on one side and a lobe on the other side. And if you look at that angle of the mic, it's facing across the room horizontally, so the center point of the microphone is nulled towards the PA.
That's right. Figure 8 has excellent side rejection, better than what's called cardioid. And we'll have a microphone class tomorrow to talk about this. But basically, I'm using those microphones to reject the PA and reject reflections off the back wall. And instead, it's picking up to what's to the side of it, and that is your beautiful voices. Typically, it's shotguns back there, but the room is not always full in the back of the room for this particular event. So I swapped out our shotguns there for the 414s because the back row is not always filled for this event. So I'm trying to get who's underneath of it or to the sides of it. We had a question here, I think, right? Yes?
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys have, for all of your, do you guys run stereo input for everything?
Everything, yeah. Stereo or die. We have a rule that we don't post mono worship anywhere ever, and if it's mono, it gets taken down.
I love that.
Yes.
But I thought mono was for microphone, right?
For what?
The main microphone.
Okay, so there are exceptions to this, yes. So when you can go stereo, we go stereo.
Okay.
So basically pianos, pads, drum overheads, guitar amps, crowd mics, all wet effects, all of those are stereo. There's no exceptions. The things that are naturally mono, like a lead vocal, that's going to be mono.
Yeah.
A snare drum, that is going to be mono. A kick drum, that is going to be mono. Now we can put room effects on it and stuff like that to make it wide if you'd like. But the things that can go stereo,
Go
they
stereo.
have to go stereo.
Or the,
And the front of the house is actually stereo. I don't know if you've walked out there, but the guitar player on the left is more on the left, and the guitar player on the right is more on the right. Overhead left is more on the left, and overhead right is more on the right. If you stand in the middle, it's pretty magical. I would challenge you or invite you to stand in the middle. It's a beautiful experience. Now it's beautiful everywhere, but the middle is especially beautiful. And two in the back. Rock, paper, scissors.
Would you ever try and, I don't know, I've never seen it before, anyone try and do stereo vocals, like live, like that's the main
That
thing.
is typically done through what's called double tracking. So you'll, rap music, pop music, a lot of modern rock music, even some country will do it. Basically, you sing the same exact thing many, many times.
oh
You
yeah.
might do it in different variation of expression. Like you might do a whisper version, a shout version, an octave up, an octave down. As long as the timing of all your phrasing is exactly the same, you can start panning them, stacking
But
them.
that's to produce reverb. That's
No, that's to create a stereo, beautiful excitement. It's called double tracking, and you can do that on anything, not just lead vocal. You can do it on acoustics, you can do it on electrics. Yes, great.
But what about, because I know that people, like they have two U87s and then they just record one time and then they have a stereo.
Yeah, I don't believe in that.
Oh, you don't?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. I think if you want stereo vocals, you shouldn't do it through some kind of fake two microphone type of system. You should just double track it and stack it a whole bunch. Like that's what the big guys do. All the pop songs, they're stacking the vocals like 10 times.
Yeah.
Watch a Jacob Collier tutorial. See how he stacks his
Yeah.
vocals. He's not singing into 3 microphones.
Yeah.
That's silly. Sing to 1 microphone and then stack it. Sing it 10 times. That's the way to do it. Jacob Collier's winning Grammys. Do what he does.
Alright, I'm not a mixer, so I don't know. I chose this class because I wanted to learn something new.
Yep.
It's working. So I apologize if it's obvious. But if you have so many different crowd mics, since it could be like 5 different mics picking up one crowd, would it make it sound bigger? Like the crowd's larger than it actually is?
like more volume, you said?
More
Say it
like,
again.
because if you
More like
have
mass.
2 mics picking
Yeah.
up one person, you have 2 different channels of the same person.
Okay.
Would it make the crowd sound multiplied? If that, I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not really sure what you're saying either, but let me speculate. Say there's one person in the room and you put 1 microphone on that person, that sounds like 1 person. If you put 2 microphones on that 1 person, does it sound like 2 people? If you put 10 microphones on that 1 person, does it sound like 10 people? I would argue that it doesn't get bigger when you start adding more microphones. When in our setup here, you hear 6 vocal microphones for the audience, and they sound amazing, right? You guys sound amazing, huge. But guess what? Those same microphones on an 8 a.m. service for our Sunday church service, they don't sound as good. But it's the same exact microphones in the same position. You would think, well, I have crowd mics, so my crowd is going to sound awesome. No, it comes down to you guys. The source material is extremely important.
Have you noticed is there a big difference? Is there a big difference in the worship school crowd compared to the Sunday service crowd when you were listening to it?
This last Sunday was magical because you all were in town. You guys make our church a lot better. You make us look good. So thank you for blessing us. Great. So Q&A is, let's move on. Next page, page 2, starting the mix. The general rule is to keep everything sounding as natural as possible. Sometimes it's difficult to maintain, but you should try to make that your target. Then you should start carving out some things to, again, create a little organization from your chaos and make sure masking doesn't occur. Basically, things are not on top of each other. So, what could we do to do that? We do something called a high-pass filter. So, if we were to look at Jenny from the block, she's up here singing. She's a good friend. We love her. And let's look at her vocal, dry. Now this is already tuned, okay? So don't pretend.
You're saying auto-tuned? Or
Everybody's
Her
obsessed with
voice
her.
is already auto-tuned, yes.
okay.
So we're just gonna listen to her dry vocal.
In the millions and all nations on day, it stands above them all.
That's her dry vocal with no EQ, no wet effects. It has been tuned though, so again, I just don't want to deceive you thinking that she sings perfectly because
Right.
If you raise that bar so high, then we all get depressed and we want to quit, right? So this is an EQ, and this is called a high pass filter. So this gets rid of all the bass. This is your number one EQ thing that you should do on almost everything. It's called a high pass filter. So I'm EQing out the low end on her voice. Watch what it sounds like when I sweep this over.
In dominions and all powers and possessions on stands above them all.
Now we're gonna go the other way. This is a low pass filter. It means low end can pass through.
In dominions and all powers.
Sounds like the bass.
It stands above.
So almost everything except the kick drum and maybe the bass, you're gonna do a heavy high pass filter. You're getting rid of the low end because the low end only needs kick and bass. Nothing else should belong down there. Not the voice, not the tambourine, not the crowds. So just get rid of it. That way you can make space. Remember, downtown is really cluttery downtown. Downtown is 200 hertz, it's 400 hertz. There's too much going on down there. So let's take this up to maybe 200 hertz.
In dominions.
Now we're also gonna do a low shelf. You could do this type of a guy. So this is a shelf. See how that looks? And we can take more low end out.
In dominions and all powers.
And then we might do a little mid-range here.
It stands
Sometimes you might boost it to find what it sounds like, and then once you find what you don't like, then you can turn it down.
in dominions and all powers and possessions on day. It stands above them all, and the angels cry.
So this is before, that's bypassed.
In dominions and all powers.
Now after.
In dominions and all powers.
A lot clearer, right?
Yeah.
And it's just EQ.
Can you do it again?
95% of mixing is EQ. So this is before.
In dominions and all powers and possessions on day.
And after is this.
And possessions on day.
A lot clearer, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you did that on all 56 channels in the song. You do it to the kick drum, you do it to the bass drum, you do it to the strings, you do it to the crowd mics. This is your bread and butter to mixing. If you're gonna study anything, if you're gonna spend money on anything, it's all EQ. Compression is way down the list, reverb is way down the list. We don't care about any of that stuff. Just get really good at EQ. Yes.
Do you mix the vocals like in parallel? Because I've noticed that people use like heat, and there's like 2 channels.
He's looking at my secret sauce. I don't talk about my secret sauce. That's a family secret. No, so there's something called parallel, means you duplicate your signal and you process it differently each time, and then you blend them together. So this one's really distorted and this one's not. And then you can throttle the volume of which one do you want. This one's really bright and this one's really dark. It's the same thing, but one's bright and one's dark. And then you can, with volume, say, do I want bright or do I want dark? That's called parallel processing. And he's noticing that I'm doing that with the vocal. Right now we're not listening to that, and that is a parallel processing does about 1% of your mix. 95% is EQ, so we're talking about the 95% right now. EQ is way more important than parallel processing. So that's an advanced technique. That's not a thing. That's not a key. That's not a key to making a great mix. The key to making a great mix is getting good at EQ. So let's go ahead and now put a compressor on. This is a compressor.
And possessions on day. It stands above them all.
So what a compressor does is it lowers the peaks and raises the valleys. So her quiet notes are not so quiet and her loud notes are not so loud. So it makes it, instead of hurts my ears, I can't hear her, hurts my ears, I can't hear her, instead every word is nice and throttled all the way through. That's the beauty of a compressor. So when you say the word compressor, you think it means it squashes it. And that's true. You squash it and then you raise it. Squash it and then you raise it. So compression actually makes things louder. It does the opposite of what you think it's doing. So I stack compression. Compressor number 1, compressor number 2, compressor number 3, a de-esser, which is compressor number 4. So put them all together.
And possessions on day.
So this is a de-esser. So when she says S, this attenuates the brightness of that S, so it doesn't.
I have a question
hurt you
about
so much.
the answer. Like, I remember when I started mixing, I started putting de-essers, but then I joined a choir, and he tells us we need more consonants.
Okay.
For some reason in choir, maybe they like T's and S's, and that was completely against what I knew.
Yeah, and we are in a field of art, so everybody's right. We can all have a different opinion, and we're all right. So if you
He
like
wants
his
us to
sound,
sing, yeah.
if you like his sound, then follow him. Just follow your heart on this one. So this one is just going to attenuate when she says S, but not attenuate when she doesn't say S.
And possession, John Day, it stands above them all, and the angels cry.
That way the S's don't hurt you so bad.
What is attenuate?
Attenuate means change or lower.
Okay, that's what I
And
figured.
then we will go into our wet effect. So this is our reverb.
And possession,
Hear that reverb there?
Yeah.
and
Let's
possession,
get crazy with it.
and possession, John Day,
Oh, the Pope.
stands above
Church.
them all,
Great. And let's try a delay.
and possession, John Day.
It's more echoey. You hear that it's not just a smeared sound, you hear a pulsing to it, right? So reverb and delay are actually the same thing. It's just how smeared do you want it to be? Reverb is a whole bunch of echoes merged together. So if you're like in a concert hall and you say, hallelujah, and you hear just this beautiful, it's actually a bajillion echoes going all over the place that smear together that sounds like reverb. Reverb is echo, it is delay. And so it's just like, how much in between do you want? So typically you'll have both. And you can throttle, kind of like the parallel processing idea, how much do I want? So this is another delay called slap delay, and it's just a very short delay. Low feedback means it doesn't delay very long. Take a listen to it.
And possession, John Day, it stands above them all, and the angels cry, holy.
Interesting, right?
I love it and hate it so much at
Yep.
the same time.
And everything in moderation. Do we love purple? We love purple, but do we only love purple?
Yes.
No.
Well, they gave us a purple bag.
I love sweet tea, and sweet tea is awesome, but is that the only thing I should be drinking?
No.
Sweet tea, nice. So everything is in moderation. So a little reverb is great, a little compression is great, a little delay is great, a little distortion is great, but you gotta be careful with all of it. So this is another type of long reverb delay thing. It's just kind of, it's like my long tail throw that's maybe how I would call it.
And possession, John Day.
I can see it.
Hear how long that is? So I have all four ready to go. Kind of like my basic reverb, basic delay, short slap delay, and then my long throw.
What was lap delay?
When is it?
What was it?
What was it? It's called slap delay. It's just a very short delay.
Okay.
Just slaps, and it's just a single feedback, like just one echo, but no more. In the back.
That slap delay you're talking about, is it a fixed value that you would use just based on the sound, or would you change it according to the tempo of the song?
So slap delay could be according to the tempo of a song, but sometimes it's not.
Just whatever feels good.
It's a feel thing, but always it's stereo. So you could do a mono delay, which is just hitting you right in the middle, but I'm always a fan of toot toot, toot toot. Instead of toot 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 toot, it's gotta go ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. That way there's stereo information happening. So if you listen to the slap delay, if this is in stereo, which I think it is,
And possession, John Day.
you can actually see it right here. These little guys are dancing independently.
And possession, John Day.
Let me put it in mono and see what that sounds like.
And possession, John Day.
Or if I put it both to the left, I don't know if these are actually in stereo, it should be.
And possession, John Day.
Yeah, it is.
If I put it only to the right,
And possession, John Day.
or if I made it stereo.
And possession,
When you have headphones, it's profound. It's like way more exciting. You want to be telling a compelling story where it's like something's exciting and something's really boring and really exciting, and it's just taking you on this roller coaster as the song is going on. So I have all these tools ready to go, and I can put them on automation lanes, and I can automate up or down what I want. So take a look. Here's my automation lanes for those effects. Here's my reverb, here's my basic delay, my slap delay, my long throw delay, some EQ thing I was doing. And as the song progresses, you can see I'm automating changes to those things. I don't want a certain phrase delayed there, so I bring it down. And if we put them all back in, I think this will probably be good. I don't know if I put these back where they should, where they belong. That one's not where it belongs. Just randomly click on stuff. Great. Moving on. Panning on the bottom of page 2. Very helpful to create intelligibility in your mix. And we talked about putting things in their appropriate shelves so they're not on top of one another. Panning is a great trick. Compression, we've already briefly talked about. It raises the valleys and lowers the peaks. That's on page 3. Parallel processing, and the gentleman here, he brought it up earlier. It allows you to do identical signals going in, processing them differently, and then blending them to taste. Kind of great. Busing allows you to organize your stuff. And so if you say I have 8 drum channels, and that's a lot to manage, what if I just put all my drums into one folder or one bus? Then with one fader you can control all 8 drums. So my drums over here, I have a lot of drum channels, it's all these red ones, but we're going down into 3 buses. That way I can just manipulate them more easily if I'd like. Effects, here we go. Reverb can add space and warmth, but be careful to not apply too much because it can cover up things and you don't hear personality or texture. Remember we talked about it's the imperfections that makes things beautiful? I would argue that a very dry vocal is more personal. You can hear the person more versus a very wet vocal. Wet vocal, I don't really know who you are. I don't know what your voice actually sounds like because I'm distracted by all this space going on. But if you just take all the stuff away, I know who you are. This is terrible, but it's like meeting somebody with makeup and without makeup.
Oh,
Yes, the makeup is beautiful, but I actually don't know what you look like. I want to know what you look like, so take it all away, and then I can really know who
Then
you
you
are.
run away.
So I would argue that we should keep our effects start low and say, is it beautiful without it? If it's beautiful without it, let's not put anything on. Only put it on if it's absolutely necessary. Delays, the same idea. Double tracking we talked about earlier as well. And it talks about how to do it right there on Roman numeral 3, page 3. And then this last page here. Sound replacement. It kind of has to do with mixing, but basically, like if you record bad drums and you don't know how to fix it, an engineer sent you, or sorry, some drummer sent you bad drums, you can use something called Stevens Lake Trigger, and it will fix your bad drums and make them sound good. Autotune is also a very important one to use. So any singers in here, you're going to use Antera's Autotune or Melodyne. We talked about it briefly yesterday in yesterday's class. All singers or producers should know how to tune vocals. That should be learn how to EQ, learn how to tune vocals. Like those are like A101 if you ever want to produce music. Yes.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
So my first question is, that's a live recording, right?
Yes.
So let's say Jen has a part that she hated, but she loved everything else. Is there like times where you like go in the studio and then record one part of her vocal again?
Yes. So we generally don't overdub here for our live records. Basically our attitude is this: if you can beat it with an overdub, we will. But many times you can't beat the energy that was on the stage. So when a singer is on the stage, they have 2,000 people in front of them, and they're pumped.
Yeah.
And they're giving it 100%. Now, you have them come back into a dark cubby by themselves with headphones that are uncomfortable, there's no fancy lights or smoke, and they're still kind of waking up, and their voice isn't great. And then you say, now give it 100% to a dark cubby room. It's very hard to get that energy back. And so also it's very hard to match it if there's video involved. Every phrase has to be perfectly aligned. And so in general, we try not to overdub anything. We only overdub if we know that we can beat it with an overdub. For lead vocal, it's kind of hard to do. Unless you're there are certain singers that are just very analytical and they can attack it with this like methodical thing. There are singers out there, we have some that can do that. But I would say at least half of our singers don't have that ability to recreate a fabricated emotion. It's faking it. You know, it's like, I hate to use those words, but you go in there and say, copy that passion and do it now. It's a little bit awkward to do that. So there's only certain personalities that can do that. In the front, yes.
Can we see the EQ of the bass?
Sure. Our bass tone rules.
Yeah.
Very little EQ. Let's try when it gets big. So this is like the chorus. Now, these speakers, by the way, are not the best speakers in the world. You're hearing a mix that was not designed for this room, so just FYI. With the drums.
Sounds like a completely different song.
Thank you.
Oh, there he is.
Snare. Can we see the snare?
Sure. We have 4 minutes, so we don't have a lot of time here. Where's the drum lead? This is the real snare. This is not replacement. This is the real snare.
That's crazy.
Where's the bleed?
Where is it?
This is my secret sauce. It's my family secret.
The snare sounds
Promise not to tell anybody?
No, we're recording.
No,
Everyone's recording.
So you're not using a replacement right there.
What you're hearing right now is not replaced.
That's really impressive.
Yep. So a good gate can completely get rid of cymbal
Yeah.
bleed. It's awesome.
When do you use?
So I know, like, I'm a drummer, so in worship, dynamic is super important, right? And I know sometimes there is a lot of compression, there is a lot of gate, and that they can like remove the ghost notes they use in the snare.
Yep.
Sometimes the sound engineer say, hey, can you play the snare at that part like a little harder? But like that's the beauty, not be too hard on that part. Have actually the difference of intensity on the sounds.
Yeah. Here's
so-
here's a ghost note for you. Here's your little ghost note popping
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
Keep going. You can finish your question. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
so yeah, what's a good balance? Because you know, I know there's a lot of extra frequencies on the drums that the sound engineer wants to cut, but at some point we also have, at some points we need to listen some small movements on the drums that are super hard to.
Rude.
I don't know, man. Whatever you and your buddy figure out. Yeah. In the back. Front's been getting too much love.
That's okay. So just to tickle my hyperactive brain, you know about 8D and using 8 dimension for sound effects. Do you ever play around with that when you're mixing?
Like Atmos?
Huh?
Atmos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our last Moments record was done in Atmos.
Oh.
I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
I think binaural audio, spatial audio is destructive. I don't like it.
Oh.
It's a whole nother subject.
So when you talk about tuning your vocal, are you talking about using autocorrect?
Yeah, auto-tune.
Auto-tune.
Yes, that's right. Every singer can benefit from auto-tune. There's 2 versions.
Yeah.
Anterra's auto-tune or Waves Tune Real Time will tune the voice for a live singer. We use it for our broadcast audio at church. If you listen to Bethel TV's live stream, every vocal's auto-tuned all the time, except Natalie Grant. She has a thing in her
Yeah,
rider.
that's what they told me.
She has a thing in her rider that says no auto-tune ever for anything. Which is weird. I actually disagree with it, but she's Natalie Grant, so she can do what she wants.
Hey, Natalie.
But in post world, like say I'm done with our live stream, we recorded it, now I'm gonna produce an album. Melodyne is the best vocal tune.
Oh.
It's not live, you have to do it in post, and it'll take you a long time. It's very slow, but it's the best vocal tune out there.
But Autotune also has this version where you can get the graph and really tune.
That's right, I don't like it. Melodyne's the best.
Melodyne better, okay.
It's the
Wait,
best.
I do have one question about EQ, if it's okay.
EQ, yes, ma'am.
For the first thing you showed us on the vocals,
Yep.
one, you don't, okay, actually it's two-part. Do you pre-compress the vocals going in, especially if you're recording? And two, how do you know like the shelves and how many in the EQ, and how do you really get
It's
a
a
good
feel-
ear on that?
It's a feel thing. I would challenge you guys to get stems of your favorite albums, your favorite artists. What are stems? Go to multitracks.com,
That's great.
multitracks.com, and find your favorite album that you think should sound like your album that you're working on. Make sure you're not listening to Katy Perry when you're working on an opera song. They have to be the same genre, right?
Yeah.
And then you solo their stems. What do those drums sound like, and what do my drums sound like? What does their vocal sound like, and what does my vocal sound like? You go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, till you can get that EQ dial to where your vocal sounds like the person you represent.
I think
What was
Mick
the
Jagger
other part?
doesn't like auto-tune
I was
either.
wondering-
What was the other
oh,
part to
sorry.
your question?
I was wondering if you pre-compressed it going in, because sometimes people don't do that
no
and they use a
nowadays.
lot of effects over these tools you're teaching, so I'm trying to find a balance on all that for vocals.
Pre-compress, like from a hardware standpoint.
Record from, sorry, the flow, the signal flow, compressing it while they're recording.
We don't ever do
prior.
that.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, I see that as destructive. And software compression / effects have become so good that I prefer them. And the biggest mix engineer in the world, Serban, he mixes every top song you've ever heard in the last 10 years nearly. He mixes all software, all in the box, he uses no hardware. So if it works for him and he's the best in the world and everybody wants him and it's no hardware, then I shoot for the same thing.
Can you use too many plugins
Thank
at some
you.
point?
Wow.
No.
Really?
I don't know. I
What
don't
about
know.
Bluetooth?
Yeah, you have a lot of questions and we're done for the day, but I
Wild.
wanna give you guys a brief tour of the studio downstairs. So follow